What is up, you guys? So today we are out here with the ZJ. If you've seen my last couple of videos, you know that we completely ripped the whole steering box off of this thing. It's pretty common on these XJs and ZJs because of how much this little part of the unibody will flex under hard articulation. And right before that, I dropped into a hole. Anyway, ripped it all off. No big deal. That's my steering box currently. Broke the front two bolts and then snapped the whole mount off of that side right there. So in order for me to fix that, I will have to replace the whole gearbox. I'll have to rerun all the wires and everything, all the hoses. The hoses are all kinds of messed up. And man, I truthfully, at this point in the build, don't feel like it's worth it. So we're gonna tear this thing down and we're gonna start on 2.0 of the ZJ build. I'm going to be swapping in this high pinion Dana 60 out of a 2001 F350. You can tell it's a 60, not a 50, because of how this comes in. On a 50, it would be a solid rectangle that would go back to here, and it'd be a hard cut down. This one, you can see, is a slow taper. That's the main way to tell the difference between a 50 and a 60. That's what I found to be the easiest anyway. But this is an 01 axle, so it's gonna be a little bit smaller knuckles and a little bit smaller U-joints than the 05 Plus. It is also going to be a 30 spline axle shaft instead of a 35. Now, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the 99 to 04 Dana 60 out of the Fords is a 35 spline at the carrier, and then it goes out to here, and there's a stub shaft, which I actually have a couple spares, and this is only a 30 spline outer. And so because it has that 35 spline inner, it is a lot more desirable than the previous years, including the Kingpin. So anything before 1999 in the Ford Series Dana 60s is going to be 30 spline all the way out. But so we have this Dana 60 out of an 01, and then we have a 14 bolt right there out of a 1997 Silverado. I believe that is out of a 2500, but as long as it's a full float, it really doesn't matter what it's out of. You can tell it's a full float because it has this little extended part here where this all bolts in. On a semi-float, it will look flatter, and it has this section is pushed back in, and there are no exterior bolts. Now, the reason I'm gonna go with these axles is because the Dana 60 out of the 99 to 04 is going to be a 35 spline at the carrier, but it's only a 30 spline at the outer stub shaft. I'll show you the difference right now. So now this is a 32 spline out of a Dodge. In the 05 Plus models of this axle, this is a 35 spline for the Ford Dana 60s. And that's why a lot of people want to run that 05 Plus Dana 60 axle. Now, with a bigger shaft and more splines, the actual diameter of the shaft will also increase. And so you can tell this 32 spline, when I set it end to end, is a good bit larger. The 35 spline would be even bigger than that. Now, with that 35 spline axle, it's going to have a larger and better U-joint, which is this part right here. That is going to be larger and better, allowing for better turning angle and a lot better strength, of course. And it'll have a lot bigger C right here, which you can see is this part. It would be taller in order to clear those larger and therefore better U-joints. The 05 Plus model will also have a thicker tube as well as a thicker metal material for that tube. Now, after I've listed all these great things about the 05 Plus axle, you might be wondering why I didn't just get one myself. Now, while the 05 Plus axle is an incredible axle and would be better in a lot of circumstances, because I'm building the ZJ, I don't feel like I truly need the extra size, strength, and weight of that 05 Plus Dana 60. Now, while I do plan to add full-length frame stiffeners and all sorts of other just strengthening mechanisms to the ZJ, I don't foresee ever running larger than a 42-inch tire on this rig. Now, additionally, I don't know if the ZJ would truly hold up to the extra weight of that 05 Plus Dana 60, because the 99 to 04 is roughly, I think it's 500 pounds, maybe 450. And the 05 Plus is an extra 150 pounds, I believe. I believe that they are right around 650 pounds. Now, you do lose a little bit of that when you cut off all the extra four-link mounts and whatever else, but honestly, for the amount of money that I'm able to put in and the amount of money I'm able to put into things like tires, drive shafts, and everything else along the way, I don't think that I can justify that 05 Plus axle. Now, an additional reason that I'm going to go with this axle is because it has 373 gearing, which is the exact same as that 44A in the rear of my ZJ. Now, where that benefits me is in the ZJ, it has a Dana 44A rear axle already with 373 gearing. And so depending on my budget and what I'm able to spend at the time that this finally does go in, I can run a 60 front 44A rear with the 373 gearing. Now, the 14 bolt has a 410 gearing ratio, which means that I cannot throw this in until I have the money to re-gear both the front and rear axles. Now, because my buddies have done this kind of stuff before, we have things like shop presses and stuff like that, we're able to do a full re-gearing for about $1,000, which is not bad. But just with my current budget and me planning to go with a full hydro steering system now instead of hydro assist, that's going to push everything back a little bit further. So we're more than likely going to have that 373 geared Dana 60 with a 44A rear, at least for a small amount of time. Now, ideally, if I'd kind of thought it through, I would have just gotten a 410 geared Dana 60 and then had this 410 geared 14 bolt, but I bought them about 6 to 8 months apart, and so I didn't think far enough ahead to think that through. Now, in addition to the axle swap, I'm going to be building a custom lift. You've seen I have this 2-inch quarter wall tubing for the front 3-link is what it's going to end up being. But so we've already cut a couple of the tubes just so I could get the pole where it would actually fit in my garage, because it was balanced on the Jeep once upon a time. I needed to cut some, but I just cut these a little bit long so that I would be able to have plenty of adjustment room, as well as stretching it a little bit further forward than I originally planned, if it comes down to that. Now, all this to say that we're going to have this ZJ on at least a 1-ton front and 3/4-ton rear pretty soon. So with that, we'll have to swap out wheels, tires, and drive shafts, everything else along the way pretty much. But I think that it'll be a lot of fun to build. It'll be great content. I'll do my best to make everything just as interesting and fundamental as possible. Now, the goal for this build is to have something that's just unique and will still come home in one piece at the end of the trip, no matter how hard I am on it. Because if you've seen any of the videos, you know I like to absolutely thrash on it. Big part of that is I'm still learning and don't really know exactly what I'm doing. But I want to be hard on this thing and it still come home in one piece. I'm also going to be keeping it enclosed, at least for now, and throw some sort of cage system in it at some point. a lot of this is gonna just be done over the next probably year or two. All my buddies have done these kind of builds before, so it'll be very well thought out, very well processed, and that's the main thing I wanna do. I wanna plan super far ahead on this ZJ and just get everything how I want it the first time through. That way, we're not gonna have to rebuild this here in 5-10 years. If you enjoy this kind of content and wanna see that ZJ just absolutely blow up in the next couple months, be sure to like and subscribe, because this thing, I can't even tell you how excited I am to see this thing in its just final form.